Good. Well, welcome again. Thank you for showing up on this Wednesday evening. Hopefully we will be able to cover a lot of the material that I have. As usual, I usually have more than I can possibly share in the time allotted. I'll start with a quick prayer and then we'll jump right in. Again, Father, you've given us this day and we thank you so much for that. It's your blessings that you provide us every single day to give us another day of life. And as we walk around on this earth, we can see your hand, your master craftsmanship in all of the things that we see in nature and in creation. We thank you for that. And as we go through this material, we ask you to allow it to be put forth in such a way that it's something that people can get benefit from. Thank you again for your blessings, and thank you for tonight. In your Son's name we pray. All right, design. We picked that up last week, just right at the end there, as the next topic on how would we go about and actually evaluate the two theories that we've been studying. So last week we basically finished up outlining the timeline of the theory of evolution, noting a couple of things. Well, first, supernova, those exploding stars that are out in the surrounding areas, out in the galaxy, they do two things according to the theory of evolution. First, they supply a lot of the raw material that is needed for these heavier elements that we require in order to build the materials we see around us, the heavier elements, the carbons, the nitrogens, the oxygens. And it also supplies a lot of the very high energy particles that is part of the engine for biologic evolution. We touched on several points in time where humans basically helped to increase our understanding and our knowledge of the universe. That was with Galileo, that was with Einstein. We looked at the predictions of the theory of evolution for the future of the universe. Right now we're in the stellar era where the suns are burning their normal hydrogen fuels. Eventually that's going to end and all the suns will burn out. We'll go into the degenerate era, which is where more advanced nuclear processes are having to function in order to supply the energy of the universe. That will eventually cascade into the black hole era, and finally the dark era, where no more available energy is there for work or doing anything. That's the heat death of the universe. Having covered the foundations then of both theories, we summarized that each theory addresses testable, verifiable, and falsifiable facts and laws within their own framework. Each has built-in assumptions where information is lacking. Each has challenging questions that it's very difficult to answer within that particular framework. Each of those theories has proponents, and each of those theories has opponents. And then, of course, each theory makes interpretations and predictions based on the constructs available in those theories. We noted that a fair scientific evaluation of all theories can be brought to the table when given the opportunity to have fair comparisons, where all of evidence is available for fair evaluation. Nothing is suppressed, nothing is hidden, nothing is sidelined. No single theory should be disparaged or suppressed in favor of another one. It should be able to stand up on its own to the available evidence. And when a true scientific methodology is followed, then, of course, the theory that best describes what we currently understand and we know about the universe, that's most likely the one that's going to be proven to be valid or has the most truthful aspects about it. We then launched into an area where we can start looking at different types of evidence. And this, of course, is design, which we're picking up again. A design is a concept of or a proposal for an object or a process or a system. The word design refers to something that is or has been intentionally created by some type of thinking agent. Sometimes we use that term to refer to the inherent nature of something. In other words, its design. Okay, it's more of almost an adjective at that point. Finally, we discussed some of the characteristics and attributes of design with respect to each theory. We touched on intent. These are different characteristics, of course. Intent of the design, purpose, completeness, evaluation, the complexity, optimization, reuse, and aesthetics. To kind of summarize all that, really boil it down from what we saw last time, we can give basically an overview between the two theories with respect to design. The theory of creation, of course, is stating that there is an intelligent creator God. There is an intelligent agent that is capable of doing design. The theory of evolution says no. There's only random natural processes. There is no intelligence behind it. The theory of creation, of course, says there's purposeful intent. And unfortunately, on the theory of evolution, there's no intent. There's no intelligence. It doesn't understand what is happening. Theory of creation says design is meaningful, that there's a purpose behind it. Of course, the theory of evolution says design has no meaning. And the theory of creation says, well, there is actual design. There is this intelligent process that occurs. And the theory of evolution says, if you see design, it is in appearance only. It is not something that was actively designed. So design is expected and should be evident in nature when viewed through the creation theory. We should find design. Design is not expected under the theory of evolution, and if it looks like it's evident in nature, then as I mentioned, it's an appearance only. So this leads into an argument that is about as old as the cosmological argument we touched on in earlier lessons. This is called the teleological argument. And it is all about an argument about, the word teleological refers to purpose or design. Okay, so it's kind of a fancy term for that. And it's there, the approach suggests that where there is design, then there must be a designer. And of course, from different dictionaries, this is dictionary.com, the word teleological is the doctrine that final causes exist. That basically says there is something that ultimately makes an effect. It is a cause. Or it's the study of the evidences of design or their purpose in nature, the belief that purpose and design are part of or apparent in nature. So the teleological argument then is all about finding design and making the conclusion that there must be a designer, which is exactly what this slide is. This is the actual argument in a formal form. The argument goes like this: if the universe shows evidence of design, it must have had a designer. We state the universe does show evidence of design, and thus the universe must have had a designer. Okay? That's how the argument goes. An argument in general is a series of sentences or statements or propositions, some of which are called premises, and one is the conclusion. So number 1 and number 2 are premises. Number 3 is the conclusion. The purpose of an argument is to give reasons for one's conclusion via justifications or explanations or persuasions. And as I mentioned, statements 1 and 2 are those premises which lead to statement 3. Now, an argument has a form in order to be valid. And this particular argument has a valid form. And that the premises necessitate the conclusion. The logic of the argument is then considered to be sound. However, the truthfulness of the conclusion is directly linked to the truthfulness of the premises. An argument can be valid, it has a good form, a sound form, but it can be found to be not true. Now, that would be dependent upon whether the premises are found to be true. As you can imagine, the creation theory accepts the truthfulnesses of the two premises, number 1 and 2 up there. The theory of evolution rejects 1 and 2 as being truthful, and so thus rendering number 3 as untruthful as well, meaning the universe does not have a designer. So let's look at this a little bit further. It isn't hard to understand where this is leading to. This correct form of logical reasoning, that particular form of the argument, and the implications that flow from it have not escaped the attention of those who basically don't believe in God. Even unbelievers understand that one does not get a poem without a poet, a law without a lawgiver, a painting without a painter, a design without a designer. You can go on and on and on with those types of associations. However, even though many unbelievers admit that design demands a designer, they deny that there is any design in nature sufficient to establish the existence of a great designer. So let's take a quick example. And this will be about an automobile as depicted on the screen. Really, no sane person would ever disagree that a modern car is a product of design. A car exhibits all of the characteristics of design that we certainly talked about last week. As well as, no modern vehicle ever just popped out of nowhere. There was an active, intelligent agency that brought about its existence. There is intent and purpose, specifics on what it brings as benefits and how it should function. There is completeness to the design, and with that comes an enormous amount of evaluation regarding its validity. Certainly everybody wants to drive a safe car, so there's a lot of evaluation, a lot of testing that goes on naturally. There is a sense of aesthetics. It is designed to appeal to an intelligent mind with its form, how it performs, how it operates, and even, new car smell, how it smells. So, looking at a car that's kind of got the blown apart, diagram of it, we see that there is complexity and there's interconnectedness that goes with that. Typically, there are about 30,000 individual parts that compose most modern automobiles. Of course, that'll vary between manufacturers and the design and all that. It takes, from design to production, historically, about an average of 4 to 5 years, and obviously with the investment of probably hundreds of thousands of people hours in order to take the vision of what this car should be to the point that it actually comes off of the manufacturing line. There is optimization that goes along with this too. Among these are, people are focused on decreasing the protection costs, increasing the functionality. There's optimizations to decrease the weight and also increase safety features. You want to be looking, as a manufacturer to decrease time and effort to build. And so there's a lot of effort in the design aspect to optimize these various things. And as engineers know, a lot of times there's trade-offs. If you want this, you have to give up that. And so you have to make design decisions around that in order to get the closest thing you can to the ultimate vision that you're trying to attain. So I want you to read you a description. An automobile is a mobile platform used to transport goods and people from location to location. It consists of a frame which has 4 wheels attached through a suspension system for a smooth ride over rough surfaces. The wheels are mounted on bearings which provide low friction rotation, even under high weight loads. There is a braking system that, when activated, will slow the vehicle through frictional forces applied to the wheels. An engine or motor system connects to the wheels through a drivetrain and provides forward or reverse rotational forces to one or more of the wheels. The vehicle can be steered via a steering wheel that the operator can turn in order to angle either the forward or back pair of wheels. An enclosed body provides comfort and protection to the occupants. Now, the question is, which one of the vehicles up on the screen was I describing? Your choices are the Ford Model T, which is built from 1908 to 1927, or the Ford Taurus, which was produced from 1985 to 2019. We got it both over here. And that is, of course, the right answer. That description of characteristics and features apply to both of those. This is an example of design reuse. Good ideas for all of those systems were thought out very early in the history of automobiles, and even though a full century has passed since the Model T was first produced, those original concepts are still good ideas, even to this day. As mentioned, design reuse is a characteristic of the overall design concept. Now, design reuse happens across multiple disparate objects. Good ideas are used in many different places because intelligent minds can envision and imagine the idea applying to more than just the immediate subject that they're working on. And it's not surprising, it is not only unsurprising, but it is almost expected that designs are often reused within the entire human context. And by that I mean those things that we build and interact with every day. And I don't think anybody with a rational mind could ever disagree with that. Thus, you see, we have wheels on a tractor, a wheelchair, an M1 Abrams tank, and a bicycle. The concept of a wheel is being reused in multiple different things. There's braking systems on each one of those. There's a place to sit. All of it has different form and function typically, but those ideas are being brought forward and reused in the design of each of these things. Another thing that any rational mind would not disagree with is that a modern automobile or nearly any other vehicle would happen just by accident. There is design that is evident, but behind that design is an intelligent agent, a single mind, or in many of these cases, multiple minds. Imagine this. We stated that there are 30,000 plus parts that compose a typical modern automobile. What are the chances that any single part could come about just by chance? It just pops out of the ground or out of nowhere. Think about what are the chances that all 30,000 parts could individually come about by chance. Each one necessity independent of the others. These things don't reproduce. I think you would see that. What are the chances that all 30,000 parts could come about and be properly interconnected all at the same time, all by chance? See, this is the core of the teleological design argument. Complexity, interconnectedness, that is not a problem when a designer is involved that can guide and direct the processes. It becomes a huge problem when there is no intelligence involved, and you must rely on random chance through random processes, through just the interactions of the physical forces that are all around us to achieve an observed outcome, such as a bicycle. So, truly, the disagreement between the person who does believe in God and the person who does not really has nothing to do with whether design demands a designer. You know, atheists or other people who are rejecting creation will say that is true. Rather, the point of contention is whether or not there is design in nature that's adequate to prove the conclusion that a designer does exist. And so the question is, does nature really show true design? So consequently, if the teleological argument is to be not only valid, but also true, then the premise that we made, the universe exhibits design, must be validated and shown to be true. So let's look at some of these things here. Okay, if we start looking at the universe, our universe operates using exact scientific laws. As we talked about, laws describe relationships, and often these are exhibited through the operation of natural forces, right? Laws of electrostatics, laws of electromagnetism, laws of thermodynamics, laws of kinetic and potential energies, laws of nuclear forces, laws of gravity, laws of quantum mechanics. There's a lot of these things, okay? These laws are expressing what we see around us, how the universe works. Why do these laws exist? Now, each theory must provide the why. That's what a theory is all about. Depending on whether they do a good job of that or not, we do know this. The precision of the universe and the exactness of these laws allow scientists to launch rockets to the moon with the full knowledge that they will land within a few feet of their intended target. Such precision exactness also allows astronomers to predict eclipses many years before they happen, or to determine when Halley's Comet will be seen again. They're able to predict the exact location of planets for doing things like gravity-assist slingshot maneuvers. The precision, complexity, and orderliness of the universe within the universe are not in dispute. However, while proponents of the evolutionary theory are willing to admit there is complexity and even order, they are not prepared to say that there is design, because that purposeful design demands a designer. And of course, that conflicts with the theory's main assumption in that the universe came about strictly by natural processes. So, continuing forward with our universe, the universe is absolutely tremendous. The outer limits have not been measured yet. It's estimated to be 20 billion or so light years in diameter. That's 116 billion trillion miles. There are estimated 1 billion galaxies and 25 sextillion stars. And if you want to know what the number 25 sextillion looks like, it's up at the top of the slide. It's a lot of zeros that follow that 25. Now I asked myself, I said, that's an awful lot of stars. And it took me back to when God was speaking to Abraham, and he was saying, about his descendants. He says, look up into the stars. See how many there are. Your descendants are going to be more numerous than the stars that you can see. And he said, look out on the beaches of the world and count the grains of sand. Your descendants are going to be, more numerous than that. And yes, these are probably similes, meaning they're comparisons that you can wrap your mind around, something that's maybe a little hard to understand, which of course the quantity of descendants was something that Abraham was not really believing at the time. So I said, you know what, I think I'm going to go ask the internet how many grains of sand are on all the world's beaches. And surprisingly, the estimate came back at 400 sextillion. Well, that's more than 25 sextillion stars, which Abraham would looking up into the sky and God saying, more stars than are here. Now, of course, the visible stars are only about 5,000. What you can see with your naked eye is about roughly 5,000 stars. But if God was saying, keep looking, get better instruments, get better telescopes, you will find 25 sextillion stars out there, and your descendants are going to be more numerous than that, then that's closer to the estimate for the grains of sand on all the world's beaches. If we look just at our Milky Way galaxy, it contains about 100 billion stars, and it takes light 100,000 years to cross from side to side. So this thing's enormous. It's massively big, but we know from some of our previous lessons that really this universe is fantastically large. Even with advances in space telescopes, the outer limits of the universe have not been observed yet. We continue to find galaxies further and further away. The observable universe continues to expand as we build these things. So we have up there, of course, the Hubble telescope put up in the early 1990s, and then at the bottom, that one's the James Webb Space Telescope. It's been up there about two and a half years now. Both of these have given us such great insights into, various sorts of astronomical phenomenon, and we've been looking further away from us with these advances in the telescopes. Well, all of these stars contained in all of these galaxies operate according to the physical laws that we experience here on Earth. And that means that, what we experience is the same even across those immense distances. There's a particular type of observatory that they built that is called LIGO. It's an acronym that stands for Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. There's two facilities. They're going to build a third one. One's in Livingston, Louisiana, and one is in Hanford, Washington. And what these do is they were designed to be able to measure the expansion and contraction of actual space-time, as what they predict is gravitational waves coming through our solar system, coming through us. It's something that we would never be able to observe. These things are amazingly delicate instruments, even though they're miles long, in order to observe the most minute change in some laser beams. And that tells them whether or not space is moving around us. So literally, the three-dimensional space is fluctuating. It was in September 14th of 2015, just by chance, they decided to take it out of test mode and overnight put it into production mode, that they first detected the direct observation of gravitational waves coming through. And if you played it as an audio sound, it'd sound like a whistle chirp. You'd go whoop, like that. And they figured out that it was very likely two black holes that had been spinning around themselves that started circling in closer and closer and closer and finally collapsed. And that has sent these enormous gravitational waves out through the universe, and just that night, those happened to pass through us. So that's their interpretation of what happened there. Regardless, looking out at those galaxies, looking out at the other solar systems, and looking out at everything that we can see out there, the universe operates like a very well-designed, very well-constructed, very well-running clock with basically billions and billions and billions or sextillions of parts. So let's come a little closer to home here. All right, so we're going to look at the sun and the earth. Now, the temperature of the sun is estimated about 15 to 20 million degrees in its core, in the center part of the sun. By the time we get out to the outer surface of the sun, it's down to about 6,000 degrees. However, a very curious and interesting aspect happens in the corona, which is the atmosphere of the sun. It goes from 6,000 degrees at the surface up to about 2 million degrees in its atmosphere. And they do have what's called the Parker Solar Probe that has for about 7 years now been circling and circling and circling closer and closer and closer to the sun, so that eventually they can go through as close as they can before it burns up to the sun's surface and try to figure out why this is the case. That's a little bit of a sidebar there, but Anyway, look up Parker Solar Probe if you're interested. Now, the Earth is located exactly the correct distance away from this amazingly hot fireball in the sky to receive the proper amount of heat and the proper amount of radiation to sustain life. If we were 10% closer, it'd be too much heat. We'd boil. 10% further away, not enough heat, we'd freeze. Basically, we're in this Goldilocks zone, as they call it. It's also known as the habitable zone around any particular sun, whereby liquid water can stay liquid, that we could potentially have life exist. That's the Goldilocks zone. Fortunately, also, the Earth's orbit is nearly circle. It's not. It has... It is an ellipse like most orbiting bodies, and as you know, an ellipse is a elongated type circle, but it has a very low eccentricity, which is measured at 0.0167, which means it deviates from a true circle, true perfect circle, but not very much. This eccentricity indicates how much the orbit deviates from a circle. I mentioned that. Value being 0 represents a perfect circle. A higher eccentricity value would indicate that our orbit would now be squished on one side a little bit too much, and we would get closer to the sun, and then of course as we went further along the orbit, the Earth would get further away from the sun. And this would cause a lot of chaos to the climate. Mars is barely in the habitable zone. It's kind of like on the very fringe of it. And if you listen to the news, we want to go to Mars. That's been one of our objectives now for a while. We went to the moon. Now we want to go someplace a little more interesting, and that would be to Mars. The thing is, because Mars is much further away from the sun than the Earth is, we can't just jump out of the spacecraft and start living. We are going to actually have to build our own environment that protects us, not only from the cold, but also from radiation and other things that Mars does not provide that the Earth does. Okay. With the Earth and the Moon, the Earth is about 240,000 miles, 250,000 miles from the Moon. And the gravitational pull of the Moon is what produces the ocean tides. If the Moon were moved closer to the Earth by just 1/5, the tides would be so enormous that twice a day they'd reach 35 to 50 feet high over most of the Earth's surface. So the water would slosh over the top of the continents. Ocean tides, however, are necessary to stir the waters so that our oceans don't stagnate. And if the Moon was much further away, we would not get that benefit. Now, interestingly enough, the Moon's orbit, which I'll describe the little lines up there here when I'm going to talk about the Moon's orbit. The ecliptic is the path that the Earth makes around the sun. So if you think as the Earth goes around the sun, if you just turn that on edge so that it looks like a flat plane, or think of a plate and you turn it sideways, you see the edge of the plate. That is the green line that I've depicted up there. So from the sun to the Earth, it goes around like this. The equatorial plane is the red line up there. And so, you've seen this on globes. If you look, you will see a line that goes around the equator, basically the belly of the Earth, right? I've got my own good equator right here, so this would be my equatorial line if I drew a line around me. So that is the red line that is up there. The yellow line is the Earth's axis. That's what we rotate around. And so as we spin like a top, the axis is the yellow line. The Earth's axis is tilted 23.5 degrees from the perpendicular to the ecliptic, which you can see up there. The yellow line is at an angle compared to the green line. Now, this is what's interesting. the moon's orbit is almost in the ecliptic. In other words, when it orbits the Earth and it goes around the Earth, it goes around very close to the plane of the green line that's up there. That is very different than nearly 170 of the other natural satellites that we have in our solar system. Most all of them will orbit the equatorial plane. In other words, around the equator. The red line is where those moons would orbit. And others are a little weird, and they sometimes orbit different directions. It is only our moon that orbits very, very close to the equatorial plane of the planet that it's around. Also, I mentioned this before, the moon's mass is very large compared to most other moons around our other planets. If the moon's mass is 1, then the Earth would be weighing about 81. Most other planets, if their moons are 1, the planets, like Jupiter, Saturn, are 1,000 or 10,000 times greater. Ours is one of the very few moon-planet systems where the moon and the planet are very, very close in mass. And these two facts call out that the moon is something very special, very different that we find in the other planets that we have in our solar system. Of course, we know from Scripture that the moon was called out specifically. It was the lesser light to govern, over the nighttime. But there's also something more. As you know, the Earth spins around the yellow axis up there. If we did not have the moon like it is, that yellow line over time would wander. Think of a child's top. You spin it up and it spins for a while like this, and then you start to see it wobble. It's still spinning, but it's not stable. And eventually, it does fall down and it stops spinning. The Earth would do something similar, and this is called basically perturbances from the other planets, from the sun. All of this can cause our axis to shift. And if it does that, what's going to happen to our seasons? What's going to happen to life on this planet? Because if it fell over on its side, then one side of the planet might stay very hot, the other side would stay very cold. Or if it's rolling like this, what's that going to do? It would cause a lot of climate problems. But because of the mass ratio between the Earth and the moon, and the fact that that moon is in the equatorial plane, it locks our wobble to just 2 degrees. So we wobble a little bit, but not very much. And this happens over, of course, a very long period of time. That stabilizes the Earth and benefits life on it. No other planet has this benefit within our solar system. So, is this design? Or is it just plain luck or coincidence? So, going on a little bit further, length of day. What would happen if the rotation of the rate of the Earth were cut in half? What if our days were twice as long? What would that do to the heat? I mean, you get out there and it's really, really hot. It's 110 degrees outside, and you're going to have 12 more hours of that before the sun decides to set. Or it's really cold outside, the sun's not going to come up for, another 12 to 15 hours. So if you speed the Earth up or slow the Earth down, it's going to really change things, and oftentimes it would impact our food in order to support us. Are we just lucky that the Earth rotates at the right rate, or is it intentional? And then because the buzzer rang, I guess we will stop right there and pick that up next time. Thank you.